We are bad at predicting how we are going to feel in the future. We can assess things okay from the past. And in the present, we kind of know, generally speaking, although I will argue that from probably from a psychotherapy lens, that many people struggle with actually identifying their feelings in the present. But we are particularly bad at predicting how we're going to feel at some future point in time based on how much work it is going to take to do something based on we're bad at predicting how good it will feel in the future, right? And we're bad at predicting what's going to happen too. So I don't know. I think that's interesting.
Welcome to The Intimate Philosopher, where philosophy meets intimacy and life's biggest questions finally feel at home. I'm Dr. Emma Smith. I'm a licensed professional counselor, certified sex therapist, and existential philosophy nerd, inviting you to join me for an after-hours conversation. This is a space to slow down, pour a glass of wine, or maybe a cup of tea, and explore the messy, beautiful intersections of meaning, connection, desire, and being fully human. This is the place for real conversations about the parts of life that don't fit neatly into a box. So, grab your glass, get comfy, and let's dive in. Hi, friends, and welcome back to The Intimate Philosopher. I am Dr. Emma Smith, and today I am once again joined by my favorite co-host, Dr. Alivia Stehlik. Hi, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course, you're just a fixture on this show now. I love it.
Me too.
So, oh gosh, we were just talking about where do we start this episode, and I don't know about y'all, but like I am going through it today.
Yeah, and I think Tennessee is going through it too. Nashville's going through it. We're in the middle of this crazy heat wave with like 100 and some odd degree heat index. There's a severe heat warning. And you love the summer and the heat so much.
To podcast world, I'm rolling my eyes into a different time zone because I am not a summer creature. I'm not a summer girly at all. I am a basic bitch of the fall persuasion.
PSL, PSL.
And I love the snow and winter. I
You
do.
do. Yeah, you do. I
know.
don't understand.
If I could finagle daylight savings in winter, I would be happy.
You like the sunlight, just not the sun heat.
Yes, exactly. More light, less heat.
Very well. I'll see if we can arrange that.
Is this where you tell me we should have moved to Colorado?
I mean, I say that fairly regularly based on the things that you like in the world. Snow and sunshine. I mean, that's pretty much Colorado in a nutshell.
I know, but Nashville's so amazing. I don't think that you could convince me to leave at this point.
Oh, we do love Nashville. It is such
Yeah.
a lovely city.
Yeah, it's great. And I never thought I would love someplace more than I loved DC, but Nashville has a way of just kind of taking over.
Wait, are you saying you like Nashville more than DC? Did I just hear that?
Ah, I knew that was gonna slip out one day. I think I do. I think I do. With one really, really big exception.
Do tell.
Mass transit.
Ah,
I loved the metro. I adore public mass transit. And I wish that Nashville would get some. And I don't mean a bus. I want the train. I want the train. I want to be underground and I want to pop out someplace magical and be like, I have no idea how I got here. I couldn't drive here if I wanted to,
but here I am.
but here I am. Yeah.
You spent so long in DC though, like a long time.
I did. But I think that, DC is so large, right? Like it's not a massive like geographic footprint, but it does feel like you really only become at home in quadrants. right? So I feel very attached to Southeast,
Yeah, yeah, that's fair.
right? But I also, like when I think about the community that we have built here, even in just such a short time, I do feel more connected to the city here in a lot of ways than I did in DC. And so many of the people that I know and love or knew and loved in DC have moved too,
Away from DC or to Nashville or both?
away from DC. So even if
Hmm.
I went back there, they aren't necessarily there.
Well, I think that that kind of cues up our what we wanted to talk about today, which is this idea of time. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I think there's something in there about you were in DC for a long time, and yet in a relatively short time, we've only been in Nashville for 2 years. It still feels like home and like you've made good friendships and community and hobbies and yeah, I don't know. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, some of it might be stage of life too, right? Like, I think I was a lot younger and a lot more broke when I was in DC for much of that time, and I wasn't running my own practice truly when I was there. I started it there, but Nashville is where soliloquy really got its big launch and where I got my ASEC sex therapy certification and really started building my slash our life in this like new chapter. And so maybe it isn't that I like Nashville more than I like DC, but Nashville is the backdrop of this chapter of my life. And so to think about doing this chapter anywhere else feels like a mismatch in some way.
Hmm. I think you have a quote about this
I
that you're going
do.
to share. Well, I mean, you were talking to me earlier about Heidegger and this idea that there's something about, I don't know, something about how we experience or create time. And as a physics major, I have my own thoughts about that, but I'm really curious about this idea of creating time and experience, and I don't know, like that's what it sounds like you're talking about, actually.
Yeah. So, I mean, what he was talking about, and for all of my philosophy nerds out there who I'm looking at being in time and I'm going to try to distill this massive text into a couple sentences right now. But when he talks about time and he talks about it not just as this external, rhythmic ticking of sorts of a clock, but he talks about the fact that as a human our being is inherently temporal and that we are intimately connected to time. And so we don't just passively sit inside a clock, like we are moving alongside of that passage of time. And so, we talk about our dreams and future projections, and like there's this relationship to time in that way. And we talk about our past, and he has this whole concept of being thrown into a specific culture and history and even a physical body that we don't choose. We just kind of end up here,
Hmm.
right? And whatever came before, we have no control over. We just have now and in our current moment, we act based on where we came from and where we're going, but we can only experience and make decisions about our life now.
Hmm.
So, yeah. So in some ways, it's not quite as like him saying we are literally time, but that we are inextricably connected to it.
Hmm. I like that.
Yeah, you're right. That does tie into what I was just saying. Thank you for that softball.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's interesting because obviously we had an outline and now we've hit the end of the outline. And so we're going to go backwards, actually. Right. You just said that we in the now, we act based on what has come before, where we've been, what we've experienced, and also based on the future. Um, and we went to this talk recently. It was actually a lot of talks all in one, and we're going to talk more about this probably next week and the week after, and maybe the week after that. It's going to be a multi-part series, I think, because there was a lot there, and it may not just be that talk. But one of the things that kind of came up was this idea that we are really bad as human beings at predicting, well, lots of things, but in particular, we are bad at predicting how we are going to feel in the future.
Mhm.
We can assess things okay from the past, and in the present, we kind of know, generally speaking, although I will argue that from probably from a psychotherapy lens, that many people struggle with actually identifying their feelings in the present. But we are particularly bad at predicting how we're going to feel at some future point in time based on, the like how much work it is going to take to do something, based on we're bad at predicting how good it will feel in the future, right? Um, and we're bad at predicting what's going to happen too. So
Mm.
I don't know. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting. And I think, this idea of is something that we're going after worth the effort?
Right. Yeah, that was, I think, the thrust of the question that he asked at the beginning of that talk.
Yeah. It was so interesting because I think that, one of the examples that this speaker used was about the the way that we used to frame our understanding of people who experience depression.
Hmm.
And we used to think that people who were depressed couldn't reap the feeling of reward from their effort. And while there is a case to be made that that could be true for some like extreme cases, like when he was talking about very severe treatment resistant cases, but for a lot of people, and probably like for most of us, depression is also a feeling. It's not it can be a diagnosis and it can be a condition, but it is also an emotion. Feeling depressed is an emotion. And so when you are in that feeling or when you're in that depressive episode, one of the things that happens is that like motivation feels really far away. And I thought this was so interesting because if you understand that that is the impairment of that emotion, then it's not about, like, waiting for motivation. It's just saying, like, I'm not gonna look for if I'm feeling depressed, I'm not gonna look for motivation because guess what? It's not there.
Well, because motivation, I think, often has this quality of I can will myself to do something because I'm expecting this good outcome from doing it. And I think
Mm,
that's what he was saying was that the what you can't do well, particularly if you're in a depressed feeling or if you are depressed or, perhaps if that's a diagnosis that you have. But I think, like you said, for all of us who have experienced just even sadness, I think, deep sadness or depression, that you don't accurately predict how good it will feel to do something, right?
right?
Like, and so if that's true, then you are much less likely to do something
Mhm.
because you
Yeah,
don't predict that it will feel good.
right, that the reward for your effort, it's always going to come in flat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's hard to do that, and I just thought that was so, so interesting, and also when you're in that place, you're even worse at predicting how you will feel at
Right.
the end of that thing, So when people talk about the example that comes to mind is about going to the gym,
Hmm.
where people say, you know, nobody ever regrets their workout. And I will argue that on a different podcast. I have absolutely 100% regretted going to the gym. Usually not because of the workout, though. It's usually because somebody felt the need to interrupt my workout to give me their explanation that was unasked for about whatever exercise I was doing.
That seems accurate.
Ugh. So, and they start with the same sentence. I don't mean to be creepy, but
If you have to say that, you should just walk away. You shouldn't have come over in the first place. Like, if you have to say that, you already know it's creepy. Don't do it. Just don't do it.
unbelievable.
But yeah,
Anyway, I digress. The idea of going and working out, people typically will feel better after they do. But if somebody is depressed on their couch, they will have an impaired ability to predict that feeling of feeling better and feeling good or rejuvenated or something, even though what they showed was that, like, those people actually, if you start a little bit below baseline in terms of emotion, you actually can experience a higher rate of reward for that effort than if you had been feeling like pretty okay and had decided to go work out.
yeah, yeah, that's pretty cool. It's interesting too, because I think this applies to something else that we've talked about recently. This idea of, I'm going to do that thing later. And by later, I mean in the summer. I will do that thing when it's in the summertime, or, you know, and I hadn't thought of this when we were talking about it earlier, but I think it's the same idea that, um, and you're going to have to explain this whole thing a little bit better than I just did, but there's this idea of, I'm not accurately predicting how good it will be to do the thing. And so I say, well, the effort would be a lot to do this. And so I'm going to put it off to some future period where I have more time, because then the effort will be less. Wink, wink.
Mm.
But it's really because I can't accurately predict that, how good it will be to do this thing.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's something that I feel comes up a lot in particularly like couples work, right? Because
Hmm.
one is that you have twice the number of schedules to try to coordinate, right? To
Yeah.
get in to do this therapeutic work or even a workshop for that matter. It's double the coordination. And what you'll hear is this cycle of folks who in the fall will say, well, it's a lot right now. And so I think, I think we'll be able to do it like in the spring or in the summer. The kids will be out of school. We'll have a lot more downtime. Business won't be as vigorous, right? Busy season is real. And then what happens is that in the summer, people will say, the same people who said that in the fall will say in the springtime or in the summertime, well, the kids are out of school now and like it's really difficult because we don't have childcare or we don't have, other things. Oh, now my company, we're out of busy season, but now they're sending me to a training and the loop keeps going. And here's the thing is like, I don't want anybody listening to think that I'm talking about people as if they're like procrastinating, because I actually think that this is genuine. There's a difference between people who are kicking the can down the road because out of avoidance, they really don't want to do this thing, and people who are inaccurately predicting the space that they will have to do the thing that they actually do want to do.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I think this is, I'm talking about it in terms of couples, but like you'll hear this about people outside of the therapy room as well. Like couples talking about going on vacation, going on a date, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
well, we'll have more time. We'll have more time. We'll have more time here. We'll have more time there. The only time that never gets um, mentioned as like a destination for in the future of having more time is the time between Thanksgiving and New Year's.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, I saw that all the time in the army, that nothing ever happens between Thanksgiving and New Year's because people are just scattered to the winds. Like there's multiple holidays, there's so much going on, there's family, there's lots of just stuff happens during that winter break too. And so not a lot gets done. It's interesting though that this idea of putting things off or of, I'll have more time later. Um, I see that a lot as a physical therapist as well, where folks are, you know, oh, I'll do this work that would help me not get injured later. And then what happens is later is after they get injured, right? Like the same work that would keep you from getting injured is the work that we have to do to recover you from injury. As I'm saying this, I'm really curious about how that does that feel similar for you from a psychotherapy perspective that there are these like things that you could do that would maybe help you avoid a crisis point?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that takes me right back to working inpatient, and I am one of those people that I believe that every single psychotherapist, baby hatchling counselor should work a year in inpatient because I learned so much. But the number one thing that I learned about working inpatient was that I think, with the exception of our chronic psychosis
Yeah.
folks, and that was a different ward. There was the ward that I typically worked on was your acute mental health and wellness deficits, right? So it was our crisis ward or our acute ward. I think they just called it the acute ward. Anyway, in that, on that hallway, at any given point in time, I would easily argue that 90% of the people who were there because they either couldn't or wouldn't access care when they were prior to that crisis point. And of course, this was back in 2014, 2015. And, in 10 years, access to mental health care it's not perfect and it has expanded exponentially. So, again, when I say this, like couldn't or wouldn't, there's probably a capital C on couldn't
Yeah.
that that is really, it was so tragic. And that's what I learned. I learned that so many of those folks could have avoided that hospital stay if they had been able to access care earlier on. So, for sure.
Well, and if we back off from that too, even if it's not like a crisis point of an individual being hospitalized, I think of your work with couples um, and the idea of a crisis point in a relationship where is there work that we can do in an ongoing or preemptive way in relationships at the beginning, along the way, in long-term relationships,
Sure.
and what that looks like, even if that's, I guess in some cases that might not even be technically therapy, air quotes, like there's maybe other things that could be part of that.
Yeah. I mean, we, when we look at relationships, right, it's one of the things that impacts our lives. I mean, relationships and work,
Yeah,
right? I
all
mean,
relationships.
all relationships. And we get so much specialized training in our careers, right? You
Yeah,
go to school, you and I'm not just talking about like college and graduate school, I'm talking trade school, I'm talking apprenticeships and mentorships and internships, right? And we don't do that for relationships at all, right? Like whatever type of family you grew up in, that was your original factory setting and that was quote unquote normal for you. And then at some point you go out into the world and you start dating and your original factory settings and somebody else's original factory settings mesh up. That doesn't mean it's healthy. It could be that neither one of you learned to talk about the things that you need to talk about, so nobody's talking about them
yeah.
until later, right? And so we don't get any training on this. There are some people, I thought this was so interesting. There are some people and therapists who will only see couples for premarital counseling, which I think is so interesting.
Huh.
Yeah, they won't work with couples once they've been together. They'll only work with couples for premarital counseling, and I thought that was fascinating.
That is fascinating and kind of confusing to me.
Yeah. So I would have to look into it more. I'd have to, like, reach
Yeah.
out to some people and say, "Hey, I see that you only do this. Why?"
Yeah.
And if anybody out there is listening and they only do premarital counseling, I want to know about this because I'm just so curious.
Yeah. Come on the podcast.
Come on the podcast, send me an email, slide into my DMs,
All the
right?
things.
All the things, we'll put it in the show notes. I really wanna know about this because I think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, also, what happens to all the people who don't make it to the point where they're gonna get married,
Huh.
right? Like,
Yeah.
we don't have, like, pre-relationship counseling.
Or during relationship, like, I don't know. I mean, you talked about school and internships and residencies and all of that and mentorship and, um, I don't know, coaching too, probably.
Mhm. Yeah, right? And we typically, I think we're starting to get a little bit better about this, but, like, we typically don't think about couples counseling or relationship coaching even as a preventative. We talk about it as an intervention, but we don't talk about getting in before there's a problem and just saying,
Mm.
like, "Hey, like, how do you wanna create this thing?"
I love that. We've talked a little bit about this idea of changing the culture of somebody's relationship, but I guess that would be, getting ahead of the game and creating the culture of your relationship, which you can do.
Yeah. I mean, you can do it at any point in time, but wouldn't that be magical if you actually had a social support system that said, "Hey, the two of you think that you like each other and that this is going to go somewhere? Like, how do you actually want this to be?" And I don't mean how many kids do you want to have,
Isn't that the
right?
only relevant question?
Oh, she's testing me, folks. She's testing me.
Just a little bit.
So, yeah, but saying, how how do you want to talk about things? You know, how do you want to define certain things in your relationship, right? Like, I know, because I work with poly couples and monogamous couples, I talk about how there's certain conversations that must be had in a poly context that we should also be having in a monogamous context because it just offers this clarity and getting on the same page in these really deep ways. It's so much more about quality time, how you spend your
Mm.
time, than it is about sex. Everybody thinks about sex with poly relationships, and I think I spend the least amount of time talking about sex, and spend the most amount of time talking about how is your time spent and whose time is it,
Hmm.
right? To bring this back around to time.
That's a nice little bow on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, normally I'm the one that's running us down a rabbit trail, but every once in a while I can circle it back and bring it back home.
Yeah.
So I'm curious though, to jump back to the physical therapy world, like, how does time relate to healing? I mean, the body is healing regardless of whether or not you are doing your physical therapy exercises, right? Like, don't you say that tissues heal? That's what they do.
Yeah. I mean, I say that all the time. Tissues heal because they do. And there are probably some caveats to that where you could be really sick or you could be doing something in an ongoing way that could be preventing your tissues from healing. But generally speaking, your tissues heal. The thing that's tricky is that that doesn't always mean that you feel better. And the time scale at which you feel better is not the same for every person or for every injury, or even for the same injury repeated in the same person. lots of different things affect that. The context of their past injuries, the context of their current injuries, their expectations of the future, their success in recovering from past injuries. There's so much that goes into it. Um, but they all take time and they all take some effort.
Yeah.
And really, for me, the goal is trying to drive people towards a better, more connected relationship with their own body and their own abilities.
Hmm. That's really interesting. And like, do you find that people overestimate or underestimate their abilities?
Uh, the populations that I have generally worked with have overestimated their abilities consistently. And what that generally looks like is they can do the thing and they have underestimated, inaccurately predicted how bad it was going to feel after they did the thing. So there may be some emotional high. They accurately predicted how, emotionally high they were going to feel after doing some physically demanding thing, but they inaccurately predicted how physically bad it would feel to push beyond some limit.
Mm. Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Yeah, you have worked with some serious bona fide badasses, so that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me at all. Well, what else do we have to say about time in this regard? Time and reward and effort.
I mean, I think there's at least several more episodes about this. Um,
Mhm.
and maybe the teaser is that we've looked at this all wrong. Um, Maybe not in this specific podcast, but as a society and as a culture, we've looked at this wrong. And maybe the doing of things, the engagement over time in
Mhm.
something is actually what drives enjoyment or meaning or pleasure or happiness. Maybe it's not a result, it's engagement, it's ongoing. And I think that's I think that's probably where we're gonna go next with this.
Yeah. That sounds great. And if you are just loving kind of these deeper dives into things that we've been doing recently, let me know like what your questions are. If there's questions that you have after you listen to this episode and you go like, "Wait, what? What do you mean by that?" Please send us an email or a comment or find us on Instagram at the Intimate Philosopher Podcast and shoot us a DM and ask your question because I would love to bring more listener questions on this show. We did a Q&A episode and a lot of people really loved it. And then I didn't get any more questions.
Yeah, send your questions, folks. We'd love to have them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I also have I want to say this because otherwise I will forget because I typically forget to share the things that are coming up. So, for folks who are local to Nashville on August 3rd and 4th, there's a sexual wellness symposium called Stimulate that is located downtown. And I am so happy that we have this resource available. It's geared towards retailers, but there's also a lot of experts that are speaking, including me. I am speaking on the 3rd, and we're going to talk about some existential, nerdy stuff there and talking about the philosophy of pleasure in the 21st century and how that can relate to business because this is mostly for people in the business space. But I'm just so excited that we actually have this in Nashville. So that's August 3rd and 4th. And then if that isn't enough, August 13th or 14th, that's either Thursday or Friday, we will be doing a master class that is all about relationships and how we invest in them and changing the culture of your relationship. And so while we will be talking about that, if you want to do a deep dive virtual, it will be free because I want to make this accessible to folks because I think this is a conversation that is just so worth having. Then stay tuned. I have a link in the show notes for you to sign up so that when I decide, probably in the next week or so, whether we're doing it on Thursday or Friday, and if you have an opinion, please let me know because I would love to make it accessible to as many people as possible. Then let me know. But we're going to be doing a real deep dive, and I have some really cool experts who are going to be joining us. Um, and yeah, we're gonna talk about this idea of what are we trying to create out of this one incredible life that we have. And I guess we'll leave it there. Do you have anything that you want to share?
No, I think that's perfect.
Okay. Well, folks, we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me for this after hours conversation. If something in today's episode made you pause, get curious, or see yourself a little more clearly, share it with a friend and keep that conversation going. Until next time, keep exploring that messy, beautiful space between meaning and being human. I'll see you next time.